You don't have to be a certain type of person, if that makes sense. Anyone can be a Christian and we all make mistakes.
Whoa. Today we want you all to share your story of the impact that Jesus Christ has made in your life. So I guess we're not doing the challenges today then.
Yeah guys, so today is very different. We're not meeting Phil, no taskmaster, no plot twist, but we want to see your story, we want to hear your story. Okay. We're going to put you in the hot seat, but before you go into the hot seat, I want to give you some time to just reflect and have a think. So explore the house, take some time, and I'll give you some questions. See you on the hot seat.
Let's do it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Producer Kaylee. Producer
Makes me
Kaylee.
sound quite important.
You are very important. So I've just sent them away to go explore the house and to reflect what the difference Jesus has made in their life.
Yeah.
Okay. Kaylee, I want to know from you, what difference has Jesus made in your life?
Jesus is the perfect example of love. There's this key moment in my life where I suddenly realised that his example of love means that, you know, it's not just like for the people he talks to in the Bible, it's for all of us.
Yeah.
And so you as an individual, your identity is deeply loved by God and by Jesus.
Boom.
So I had this moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have to try and find my identity anymore. I don't have to search and strive and try and be good enough. I'm already loved by Jesus, and he literally saved my life.
Wow. How did you hear about Jesus?
I heard about Jesus through my mum, and also my mum took me to church since I was like very, very young, like probably when I was born.
So I heard about Jesus the first time when I was very young. My parents are pastors at a church right now, and even before that I went to church every single week. Just weekly hearing about Jesus constantly got me to realise who he was, why we follow him.
Well, I kind of grew up in a Catholic household in India, so my parents were always telling me about Jesus. They were always like, yeah, this is a great guy, you should like read the Bible. But I never really delved into it as much as I could have, because they kind of forced it upon me, which I don't think is like the best way to go about it.
Yes, so I grew up in a Christian family. So my granddad was a pastor in Brazil. My dad's was a pastor in Portugal. It's mostly when I grew up, my whole background was just knowing Jesus and just that culture of knowing and getting close to him.
Once upon a time with all the believers, right, they were kind of looking for this God, and they, you know, God was this voice, or he was a cloud, or he was a whisper, a kind of prophecy. And then Jesus is there. He's the face to the name.
And that's still the case now. Like in the midst of your difficult times, in the midst of your celebration, you know, there's this need in us to look for that thing that's more. In that moment, it's Jesus that we look to. It's his face. Mm-hmm. He puts that face, like you say, the face to the name. God, our Jesus, is there for us. What made you want to follow Jesus?
Like, I grew up and I knew, and I was like, I believe Jesus, but I don't think I'd like had a moment that like I decided. But I think it was when Soul Survivor, like 2 years ago. Yeah, so Soul Survivor is a Christian camp festival. Everything was just so emotional. I don't know what happened. I just started crying. I just like had this realization that like, yeah, I want this every day. I want to be in His presence, and that's where like I decided to follow Jesus.
So I think a big thing that made me want to actually follow Jesus was worship. Especially recently, it's become a big thing for me because it allows you to connect with Jesus and the Holy Spirit in a different way. I found that the words, when they're put with music, can create a whole different kind of vibe and can show you truly who Jesus is in a amazing way.
As Joelle said, Soul Survivor 2019, I remember going there and it was like the last day. And I remember being in worship and just feeling like this sense of, I don't know, just like this weight being lifted off of me. And I was like, wow, this is cool, but kind of scary at the same time. And I was really confused. And I remember looking to like the left of me, seeing like my friend crying, to the right of me and seeing like my other friend like laughing. And I'm like, I don't know what's happening, but this is kind of like cool, but yeah. So I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna give it a go. So I went out with my friends and I was praying and I was just like, yes, I love this. And I was like, I'm really gonna give this a go. And I just felt like this spark inside of me just ignite.
And there was this lady called Blondell who used to help with our youth group. And it was just something about her, like, sometimes I call her like my guardian angel. I don't know if she knows that, but yeah, sometimes I call her like my guardian angel because she's the one that sort of encouraged me and carried on encouraging me like every time I went to church. And just the way she spoke to me and explained things to me sort of helped me understand the most. So I think she's the main person that influenced that.
I read a lot of autobiographies and I read a lot of things about really cool people, right? And you're like, there was just something special about his ministry, about what he actually did. Like, ministry is such a weird word, but it's basically what he did on earth. He was a carpenter. He did like this random job for like every one of us does a job. But then he just launched into these miracles and in his teaching. And it's teaching that didn't just stay there 2,000 years ago, it's still with us today. It's changing the world today. It's amazing.
Yeah, and like whenever we, right now, have one of those moments where we're like, I don't know what the right thing to do is, or how do I treat people, we look at Jesus and he's the perfect example of how to live a life of faith. It's our blueprint for living life now. What difference has Jesus made in your life and in the lives of the people you know?
I'd say he's been really loving. Like ever since I was little, I didn't have, this is really deep, gosh, I didn't have much of a father figure around. So like hearing people say like, God the Father, I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. What's this about? So as like months go by, I'm like, wow, he's a really loving God. And like he really is like a father figure to so many people. And I think in my generation as well, I've heard so many people being like, oh, my dad's not really a dad, or I don't have a dad around. And like, I know my best friend Jodie as well, like she didn't really have a father figure, and seeing how God has worked in her life is just incredible to me, like providing that figure, but also providing like this comfort blanket around her like 24/7, and around all of my friends that are Christian as well, like seeing how he can really just mold someone's life into something that's so beautiful, I think is insane.
I feel like I can give more, like more love, has made me like more humble and grateful for the things I have.
Basically with Jesus, you don't worry as much about the small things, like your jobs, your grades, all of that stuff. You know it's going to be okay because Jesus has a plan. And sometimes without that security, you can get stressed when you don't need to be. So in my life, I believe that Jesus has taught me, made me be able to see the bigger picture.
In terms of when I've had like tough times, like hard times, like before when I didn't know Jesus as much, I think I struggled a bit more finding hope in overcoming that challenging time. But I think once I knew Jesus, it's almost like I had a shoulder to lean on. Even though I have support and people around me as it is, if all of those people are gone, I'm always going to have at least one person, if that makes sense.
There's this word that keeps coming up whenever I think about Jesus or like I read about him, and it's called a scapegoat. I don't know if you've ever heard of this word. It's quite like a weird old word.
So a scapegoat, basically, if someone sinned, so if the whole community was sinning, so say
Everyone.
If there was like something that started festering in their
And this is in the
little
olden
town.
times.
This was in the Old Testament. This
Yeah.
is what they used to do. So if like everyone in the community starts worshipping idols or something like that, then they would like basically curse a goat, put all of this sin on this poor goat, and then they would set the goat free, and it would run far away from their village, their town, whatever they would call it.
So that means that Jesus is like that poor goat, right?
Yeah.
In a way that like that goat took all of like the sin of that community on it, like Jesus took that. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's what I love, because that is, as you said, Jesus encapsulates and sums up love. He also sums up this sacrifice. Like he's done something for us. And I'm like blown away by that. The thing that I love about Jesus is that he died and rose again. Because there is no other person who, like, if Jesus didn't die and rise again, then my faith is useless. Because my faith is in the idea and the reality that he defeated death.
Yeah.
That there is now eternity, there's hope, there's everlasting love, like he can love us, God can love us. What advice would you give to anyone who is thinking about following Jesus?
There's no such thing as a perfect Christian. You don't have to be a certain type of person, if that makes sense. Anyone can be a Christian, and we all make mistakes. Like a pastor can make a mistake. Like I think that's what most people need to know.